Welcome to Semi-Sages of the Pages.
Get ready.
Because it's time to turn the page. Welcome to this episode of Semi-Sages of the Pages.
Woo!
For today's episode, you're just going to hear myself and Theresa.
Wasn't sure if I was announcing myself or if you were announcing me.
I wasn't sure there either. Maybe that's humorous. Who knows? We'll find out today.
If you're laughing, listeners, it was humorous.
There you go.
And totally intentional.
Obviously, always intentional. Unfortunately, Morgan couldn't be with us today. She's feeling under the weather. So we hope she has a speedy recovery and is able to join us next time soon.
Next time soon.
Listen, English is difficult, okay? Speaking is difficult. It's hard stuff. On that note, this episode, we are going to talk about humor. Unintentional or intentional, we're gonna talk about it today because we feel it fits a really important role in a lot of things, but in our writing and also in our styles, who we are as writers. So first off, we thought, for our On My Page section, we were going to talk about what we personally find humorous, because humor is incredibly subjective. So if we start by telling you guys what we think is funny, you might get to the end and you'll be like, oh no, I do not agree with these ladies. And that is well worth it.
Or you might agree that we are the most awesome and amazing people ever, and you want to come and hang out with us.
Yeah, because we have great taste.
Our Discord. Please don't come to our homes. Knock on the door and be like, hey!
That's weird. Do not do that.
Yeah, no. But you could come and hang out with us on our Discord.
Yeah. Talk about all our favorite shows or movies or books. Quick plug. By the time this episode comes out, you'll be able to see one of our live culture clubs where we're talking about one of my favorite humorous shows, which is What We Do in the Shadows.
Yes. And that's one of my favorites too. I actually do a really fun Nadja. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that episode. So, but we're talking about what our favorite humor is. And that is I agree. That is one of my all-time favorite humorous shows. And so, humor's hard to define. And I think that humor's hard to put a label on. It's sarcastic, very sarcastic. It's slapstick. What else would you say it is, Molly?
It is, sometimes it is ridiculous. It's physical humor. It also is, I think the big thing about it, it's defying expectations. Right? Mm-hmm. So it has a fun premise. If you don't know what the premise is for the TV show, because there's What We Do in the Shadows, the movie, and then there's the TV show. But the TV show, the premise is you have these vampires who are hundreds of years old, and they live together in a house in Staten Island. And usually so many of the vampire shows or movies or books that we read are all like, the vampires are broody and dangerous and sexy and cool and all this kind of, and they're at nightclubs and all this kind of stuff. And
all of which happens,
right? This is true in the story. Which what you also find is like these ill-adjusted people who are hundreds of years old and still wear the old fashions and don't understand modern world or modern technology and just have to like try to live their vampire lives. And they're weirdos and they get in weird situations all the time. So there's the humor of the unexpected, of the ridiculous, of the turning the trope on the head.
Of like, where's Guillermo going to hide that body now? The backyard's full.
One of one of my favorite things that like there's so many things that happen that are just funny upon funny upon funny and revolving jokes and stuff like that. But one of my favorite, like, it's a simple bit, but it involves, like, in the last season, it's not a big spoiler, but they're making money from one of their endeavors. And at one point in time, you quote unquote catch one of the characters stealing money from their business endeavor. And it's like, no, 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 don't tell anyone, don't tell anyone. And then it turns around and you find out that everybody is stealing money from it and none of them are telling each other. And they all think they're being like the bad guy and like, oh no, don't worry about it. Like no one has to know. And they're all doing it. And it's just, there's so many funny things in that show.
Yeah, no, there is. I think I also really enjoyed How I Met Your Mother. I know that's an older one, but I really liked that. I loved Barney. I loved it. I thought that was such a fun, ridiculous, over the top character. And some of the stuff that they would do, and like some of the physical humor they would do, like Barney would like pretend to like shoot himself in the head, and a character standing next to him would like wipe the brains off of her face, and no comment or anything else, just it goes along like we have a major problem.
I was gonna say, general whatever. I liked that one. I liked that the Barney character, like everyone knew he was a kind of a bad person.
Oh yeah, he was a terrible person.
Yeah. I liked that was the joke, not that the joke, right? I tend to not like things that are the same old joke or like the punching down joke. So, oh, he runs like a girl. Ha 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 ha. Like that's just not like that funny to me. Or like there's like the punchline of, oh, the husband hates his wife because the wife is controlling or the wife nags him a bunch. That's just like not that, like we can go deeper. We can get past that, right? Like in my mind, like that's where I'm at with those ones.
You mean the sitcoms that were indoctrinating women of like, oh, sweetie, you're just like a little goof man. I'll go ahead and clean up the mess that you made. Aw, I love being married. You mean those ones? And then it would have the laugh track in the background. Yeah. Yeah, those are not funny. Those are.
But you even see those in like some of the 90s and early 2000s sitcoms that rely on some of those old tropes and old stereotypes. And I like that there's a lot more recently that gets away from some of those stereotypes. Like you can have humor that's based on tropes and stereotypes, but I like getting beyond it. It's like, okay, tell me something else. Like I like that. Another one that I really enjoy, Futurama. I'm a sucker for Futurama, which Theresa might appreciate. I was thinking about this. If I told you that the premise for a show was that it's a spaceship crew and they're going all, and it's crew of misfits, and they're going all around doing deliveries for a series of potentially odd and illicit buyers and sellers. Have I just described to you Futurama or Firefly?
Right. And if we're talking about Firefly, and again, old show, there were really good moments of humor in there. I mean, you got Kaylee calling Captain Reynolds Captain Tight Pants, which he was wearing very tight pants. It was that type of humor where you're like, wait, what did she just say? And they would just continue that just quick little dry, sarcastic humor that I think that's probably my favorite kind of humor. Dry, clever, sarcastic.
I agree. I thought that, no, that's not a humorous show. It's not a comedy. Firefly is not a comedy, but it does have humor in it. Like most things have humor in them. And for me, like you said, the humor in Firefly works really well. And often it's because it's that dry, for me personally, it's the dry humor. It's the fast humor. It's some of the humor of the ridiculous. It's some of the character humor. Like Jane is just a funny character who gets put in funny situations, and it's easy to do that with him. It's easy to like put him in funny situations, and it's easy for the captain to like get put in funny situations and have that be humorous. Or like even when he just ends up naked, you know, in the desert.
Right. And he
Um,
just saunters, and I mean, with things by like, I swear by my pretty pink bonnet, I will end you. It starts off with that humor, and then it's like, no, that's actually serious. Like,
yeah,
even the episode of that was Jamestown, and we don't mean to be digging into Firefly. And we're almost done
but
here.
we will.
But we will.
But we will.
Even the episode that was Jamestown that had so much humor, where they erected a statue for him. It still that it ended. There was the song, and the crew being like, this Jane, he's an asshole. It still didn't. The episode did not end well. The episode ended very sadly, actually. And so, oh, go ahead.
I'm with you. I think we should turn the page here and talk about humor in media, not necessarily writing pieces that are comedy pieces, right? Like as a
Right.
genre. We're talking about humor in your story, in your non-comedy story.
Right.
Like putting romance in your non-romance novel, putting humor in your non-comedy genre movie, or sorry, book. And in this case, like staying with Firefly, why is there humor? Firefly is not a comedy show.
Mm-mm.
What role does humor have in it? And I think when you look at the episode, for example, of Jamestown, part of it is diffusing tension.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's not it's a dystopian world, and we're not on the good side of dystopia in Firefly. It's a dark, gritty world. It's very they're barely scraping by. In fact, there is an episode where they almost all die. A couple of them. So I agree. The humor is there to diffuse the situation. And I would also say to make them more human.
Yeah.
Because we do that. We don't know what to say. We don't know what to do. And we turn to sarcasm.
So I read something interesting that talked about the role of humor in psychology, the role of humor in us as humans, not in literature, but in society, yeah, in general. And they kind of listed two reasons. One is tribal bonding,
Mm-hmm.
right? Make you feel like you're one of the tribe, one of the people around you, you're in a community. And the other one is relieving tension and
Mm-hmm.
relieving stress. And I think that directly applies to writing, right? You're trying to make the reader feel like they're part of the story and make them feel like they're connected to the characters, like the characters are relatable and believable, and building that bond. Or two, and I guess it goes beyond characters, it could be the plot or the premise or whatever, the voice. And two, it can be strategic in the tension and pacing of your book.
Mm-hmm. Well, the second Lord of the Rings movie, help me.
Two Towers.
Two Towers, thank you. Used Gimli a lot as humorous
Can
relief.
you give me a box? Yeah.
Yeah, can you get me a box? I mean, we're talking, we're at Hell's Gates, and he's jumping because he can't see.
Yeah. And let's go backwards, because I think this is a brilliant point that you're making. This is an incredibly tense situation. They've all fled to this place. They are getting attacked by a giant army. There is essentially no way out. They have like very little hope. They don't have enough fighters.
Yeah. I
They've
mean,
just
that
had
scene where they hand a child
a
a
sword.
helmet and it falls down his face. And then he's
Yep.
like looking up, like with that sword, being like, I got nothing. You want me to, I'm 12.
Yep. And they just
Um,
have this scene where Aragorn and Legolas are talking, and Legolas is telling him, this is a completely pointless scenario, and these people are all gonna die. And Aragorn turns around and says, then I'll die with them. And we have this serious stakes and heaviness and child fighters and all this stuff. And then we get Gimli jumping up and down on the ramparts.
bring me a box.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it doesn't feel, and we were also talking about this, it doesn't feel incongruous to the story either. Right? Because sometimes I think people worry about putting in humor and they're worried that it will break the believability or break their reader's connection to the story. And I don't think that's, yes, you should always be aware of that. And I've certainly read humor where you're like, what is this doing? This is not appropriately placed.
We all have. We're like, wait, what? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But that wasn't one of them. I think
No.
the character himself fit with, like, it made sense that's what the character was doing. That's who the character was.
Exactly. And I mean, Merry and Pippin, great example. They go, the Ents pull down, again, you're gonna have to help me, Saruman's tower.
Yeah.
And they're sitting there like smoking pots and feasting.
Yeah.
And Gandalf is like, oh God, hobbits.
Yep.
And I mean, such a great, like, triumphant moments, but you still have Gandalf being like, what the hell are these guys doing? Hobbits.
Yeah. Or even like, let's take Pippin from the first book, and there's, they're in the mines of Moria, and it's actually kind of a slapstick physical humor bit where he knocks the skeleton down and the skeleton's falling down through the well for comically long time, right?
Yeah.
Like you hear it like clanking around for like, I want to say 30 seconds to a minute. And the whole time, like, Pippin's just like sitting there, like, every time it hits another thing, he's just like, like making the face, right? And it's a comic moment, but is
then
very, but then turns on like
fast.
It is a fast turn. But it's so good and it works so well because you see all, it's dead body to humor to, it's going down.
Well, and it's also Gandalf's reaction to it. He closes the book and he's like, and he says something, full of a took. God, how do we know this movie so well? And you kind of expect like this chastised moment where he's like, oh, Dad, sorry. But it's like, oh no, we're about all to die. We have to run.
It doesn't give you the time to have the chastised moment. It pushes you through the story. Right? Which is a great, right? We talked about humor as, we did talk about humor as tension breaking. We talked about it as building, community. But in this case, humor pushes the story forward.
Right.
Which is if I had come into today and be like, hey, does Lord of the Rings use humor to push the story forward? I probably would have told you no. But at least it does here.
It does. No, it does. And I mean, even at the Battle of Helm's Deep. Thank you.
I got your back.
That Legolas and Gimli are counting how many people they kill. Again, super, super intense moment.
Morbid gallows humor right there.
Yeah, exactly. And not enough probably to make you like laugh out loud, because again, it's moving fast, but enough to make you kind of go, oh,
little levity.
Exactly.
Or even in that battle where it's a callback, right? And Gimli tells him, I can't make the jump. You're going to have to toss me. which is a callback to the previous movie where he says, no, nobody tosses in a dwarf, and now he has to like, right, we're subverting the expectations, we're turning that around. And then the funny line is, just don't tell the elf.
Right.
Right.
Right. Exactly. Okay, so that's an interesting point about building community. And when you were talking about how humor builds community, you see that a lot in series or in TV episodes or even movies that have spanned a long distance of an inside joke, an Easter egg.
Yeah.
And let's go back to How I Met Your Mother, the slap bets. Great example of that, where all of a sudden Barney would just do a slap and you're like, whoa, if that was the first time watching the episode, you would have no idea why he just did that. But it's tying back to
the recurring jokes.
A recurring joke. Exactly.
I love
and again, me too. But that's the community. You are building a inside joke, and it makes you feel like these characters. You're sympathetic to them. You would hang out with them. They're your friends because you're friends. You have inside jokes with your friends.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a really good point. And it makes you feel like you're in the know.
Mm-hmm. You're important.
You're important. You're one of the things. Now I'm on the like what we do in the shadows, and there's the recurring bit with like the awful hat. Right. There's just so many. That's I really like your point about inside jokes and the purpose that they bring.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to be careful in writing. If your character already has a friend group and their friend group already has inside jokes, then the reader isn't in on it.
Right. That's a good
point. And then the
point.
reader feels excluded. And I think you see a lot in movies, TVs, books, media in general. A lot of times you get introduced to characters who then form a group.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're part of a group and then they leave a group to join a different group. And you get to, and I think part of that is when you already have an established group of characters together, the reader feels like an outsider, or the TV viewer or whatever feels like an outsider. So you have to figure out a way to like introduce the characters or introduce them in a way that the reader feels like they are part of the group as well. And they haven't just walked in. Like, it's so awkward. You've been in like a dinner party. God, how old did I get?
You went and hung out at a friend's house.
You hung out at a friend's house. You went to a party. You went to someone, and it was a bunch of people you didn't know. And there was a group of like 4 or 5 people talking, but you didn't know anybody else. So you like went over, and they already knew each other, and they're already talking about a thing. Yeah. And you're trying to figure out, how do I fit in? I'm not really part of this group. I don't really know the dynamics. I don't really know, is she dating him, or they're not dating, but they used to date,
or maybe people are having an affair. And
yeah, I don't know what the inside jokes are. I don't know the last vacation everybody went in, on. And then you just feel like awkward and like you're not part of the team.
And you're just standing there awkwardly. And then sometimes people try to invite you in, and that makes it worse.
Sometimes.
And then you're like, I want to kind of leave and don't know how.
But I think that's like when you're writing, I think that, this is maybe a little bit of an aside from humor, but that is a danger if you introduce characters who are already all know each other and they're all very comfortable with each other, and they already have an inside joke, and they're all talking about like, oh, this is, 50 turkey legs, and everybody laughs, and you're like, why is that funny? Why is 50 turkey legs funny? But
if you have to figure out if you're going to try to explain it, or if you're just going to let it go. Or and again, say this is part of a series, but you're trying to build books that tie together, but they can be standalone, which, by the way, is very, very difficult to do. There are writers that do, but it's very, very difficult. And a lot of times how you tie those together are with inside jokes, but you have to do it in such a way that doesn't alienate readers that aren't in on it. And I've read books like that where I'm like, I think I'm missing something. And it
Yep.
is, you kind of get that like awkward, like not included in the group
Yeah.
feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely read books where it's like, am I on book 2 of the series?
Right. Is there a
Did I
novella I
accidentally
missed? Yeah.
did I miss something? Like this seems like they've already like had part of the plot here. Um, but yeah, and there's ways to do it, but I think that's why so often in books or TVs and movies, you get to watch the forming part of group building.
Mm-hmm.
Or like How I Met Your Mother, they do a fair number of flashbacks.
Right.
Or Firefly, they do a fair number of flashbacks so you can see how they all got together.
Right.
I think the first few episodes of Firefly, there's like a flashback consistently, so you
Oh.
see, right, like
Well,
you
that
get to
depends on
see.
which order you started Firefly on. Did you start watching it the way that Fox started it, which was terrible, and Joss was really mad about that? Or do you
That's
start it
fair.
where he wanted it started?
That's fair.
And
I
yeah,
did the second, but
maybe we need to do an eepisode about Firefly.
maybe. But
Although I feel like it's been done.
probably that's true. But they do a bunch of flashbacks.
They
You
do.
see how everybody joined in on the crew, and you get to be part of, oh, this is how the joke was made, and now I'm in on the joke.
Right.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah. No, I know. So, and and one other kind of humor I wanted to go to is, and it's a very, very popular one, especially in the fiction that Molly and I really enjoy reading and writing, and that's the sarcastic heroine. The
No, really.
the self-deprecating, sarcastic, my life is a mess.
But I persevere anyway.
But I persevere anyway. I know I was just listening to it was actually, it's a general fiction with a romance subplot. A very, very self-deprecating character. And sometimes you're like, shut up, stop, just stop talking, stop. Why are you telling that to your ex-boyfriend? Stop.
That inner monologue that's like,
yeah.
yep.
But it's well done, and you really feel for the character. But she's and she walked away and she was like, why did I say all that to my ex-boyfriend? And I'm like, I know, I was telling you that.
Yep.
But that can also be funny too.
I enjoy those kind of, they're oftentimes first person, sometimes a tight third. You find it a lot in paranormal romance, urban fantasy, some young adults. I'm missing something here. Sometimes romance.
Yeah, a lot of romance.
Right.
We'll have that.
Where you get that almost fourth wall break. Character talking to themselves / talking to you / train of thought, kind of, well, the humor in the everyday.
Deadpool is a great example of that fourth wall break.
Yeah. And
really,
he's
really
a great example of this type of humor, but not it's not the character isn't a woman.
Right. Yeah.
But it's the same, sometimes self-deprecating. Very sarcastic, fast, witty, on point, almost talking directly to the reader, viewer, whatever. It's the exact same type of humor. But
there's still tricks to that too. The character can be self-deprecating, but has to be aware of it. And it almost can't be as you as the author. You as the author can't be making fun of that character.
Yeah. I agree.
And that's a very, very fine line. As soon as you as the author start making fun of characters, I really think you lose a lot of the humor. And then it's just mean.
I once heard like self-deprecating is fine as long as there's like an awareness. The character has an awareness if that's what they're doing.
Correct.
It's not like funny when the character just has low self-esteem and they're just sad. Like it's just not funny.
Let's take it back to The Maid. Did we find that character funny?
No.
No. God, no. No,
And
that
I don't think the author was trying to make her funny. That wasn't.
No, but I can see people thinking some of her behavior was funny.
Well, and they did talk about how like she was the character in the universe. People made fun of her and laughed at her.
Right. Molly the maid. Yep.
Yep.
But she was not self-deprecating at all.
No, she was not
the
self-deprecating.
opposite.
Well, I think it's like, what's the joke? It's like I don't mind if my friends make fun of me for something that I am not actually self-conscious about.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like the 6th grade syndrome. Like those middle schoolers know exactly what actually bothers you. And that's what like when you know what someone's pain point is, it's not funny to make fun of it.
No,
like,
but people can find humor in that. But it's not funny to the person.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I can make fun of myself for talking funny, or I don't know, having a funny nose, whatever it is. But there's other things that if, someone made fun of me for those things, like, hey, Molly, your nose is funny shaped. Yeah, I get it. That's fair, but I'm just picking, my nose is not funny shaped, I don't think.
It is
but
not.
Anyway,
it is not.
But I mean, the front teeth are a little bit. But anyway, I'm not self-conscious about that. We can laugh about that all day long. But if someone comes in and talks about, things that I actually am self-conscious about, then my feelings are really hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's not funny for me anymore. And as a reader, it becomes less funny too. Then it just becomes being mean.
Yeah, I think so. It can be done. It can be done with the oh my gosh, did they just say that, as you're kind of chuckling just a little bit because it's such a cutting remark, but what comes afterwards really matters.
Yeah.
And how that character handles that tells you a lot about it. You can use it for really good character development too. Or character building. Telling us how a character would respond to a really funny cutting remark tells us a lot about them.
Yeah.
Both their inner and outer lives.
Do you think that there are any humor faux pas? I've got one.
Okay.
Or things maybe to avoid. For me, my humor faux pas or thing to avoid is it's just not classy to punch down.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to make fun of other people, especially making fun of other people in situations that you don't understand, or people who are in minority groups or who have traditionally less power or influence or whatever. It's just not and falling into those types of stereotypes. It's just not I don't find it that humorous. Even whether you think it's funny or not, I don't often even find it just that humorous in general. So that's kind of my thing where it's not for me, thanks.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that either. Sometimes you'll hear comments that are so clever that again, it goes back to the cleverness for me. I do enjoy clever humor. But a lot of times it's it's not, you kind of get that icky feeling, I think, sometimes where you're that's funny, but not. Yeah. But I mean, humor's in the eye of the beholder. I mean, some people think that a word like hullabaloo is hilarious. It's an inside joke, listeners.
I think unless you object, I think that's a perfect moment to turn the page.
Absolutely. All right.
And we'll let you in on this inside joke.
Go for it.
So in this section, we wanted to talk about something that's happening in industry, or industry section. And what we wanted to talk about today, keeping with the humor theme, is bad advice that we've seen about writing humor and Teresa, you want to clue them in on the hullabaloo joke?
So we actually do research for these episodes, and so we were we were doing research on how to write humor, because as Molly and I said, I don't know, you just do it, and sometimes people laugh at it.
Right? It's the old joke about like, how do you identify porn? I don't know, but I know it when I see it.
Right. How do you identify art? I don't know, but I know it when I see it.
Yeah. So sometimes we're like, you know what? Maybe we should do some research and see what other people think.
Right. So we were doing some research, and some of the advice is just stuff that Molly and I kind of disagree with, or it might be genre specific. Molly and I are not literary writers. And so literary humor is going to be different than paranormal romance humor. It's going to be different than a joke book humor, or a children's book humor. But some of the advice that we were seeing was, things like use alliteration. So alliteration means that you're using the same sound or the same consonant in a sentence
Repeatedly.
over and over and over again. Yeah, exactly. I don't find that funny.
Well, and it is going to depend wildly on your style. Because if you suddenly put a sentence with, Brad ogled the busty brunettes at the beach.
I picked my husband's name.
I just picked a B name, okay?
I know, I'm just
this is why I write. I shouldn't be part of a podcast. I can't think fast enough. Sure, maybe that line is like goofy or like humorous adjacent. But it's not gonna fit in your it's gonna like look really odd in your story depending on what the rest of the style in your story is.
Right. And I'm struggling to even think about why I would intentionally choose alliteration to I can't even think of why I would intentionally choose alliteration unless it is in a self-deprecating way and the character is intentionally using alliteration so that somebody can be like, why are you using alliteration? What are you doing? Or I'm doing it, they bumped their head and all of a sudden can only talk in alliteration. I can see that being kind of humorous.
Yeah, that'd be kind of funny. But like some of the tips and tricks that we saw on here were things that like made us kind of just like shake our heads and go like, well, that doesn't work all of the time or doesn't even necessarily make sense, or maybe not even as funny. Like use alliterations we saw was one of them. One of them was like, just use funny sounding words.
Like hullabaloo.
Yeah, like hullabaloo. And it's like, I don't know that I've ever written a book. I mean, hullabaloo is like, it's a word.
It is
a
word
that stands out.
I can see a character in my head using that word, but again, is it at a party? Are we walking in and there's somebody being like, look at all the hullabaloo? Even then I would probably be like, what? That's not funny.
Yeah. It's just odd. Or
yeah.
I mean, maybe the other thing is I write a lot of young adults and I write a lot of speculative fiction. Often my fiction doesn't take place on Earth, So it's like that is such an odd word. Like, why would it sort of breaks the reality of the fantasy world when someone says hullabaloo, I think. But maybe that's the point.
Okay. Let's go back to Firefly. Malcolm Reynolds walks in, they're all sitting there eating dinner and he goes, what's all the hullabaloo about? I might snicker. I mean, it would depend on the context, but I might be like, it's a funny word. Why is he using that word?
Actually,
I probably wouldn't even snicker.
No. For me, like, and then there was another one that went off of this, which talked about like just words that have certain consonants are just funnier. So you should use words that have like K noises or G's, like guacamole is a funny word. And I'm like, okay. And I think the problem with these ones for me, the problem with like alliteration and use funny words and use words that have funny noise, quote unquote, funny noises, is like there's no actual, to me, there's no actual humor in that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not, there's no joke, there's no punchline, there's no like logic. Maybe that's my problem is I'm an engineer and I'm like,
Where's the
what's
logic? Where's the
yeah,
cleverness?
where's the
Yeah.
cleverness? Yeah.
I mean, okay, let's look at quesadilla. You know, we live in California. We eat a lot of Mexican food, so you know we see the word quesadilla. We know that the double L's are pronounced kind of like a soft Y. But it's been a joke for a long time of like quesadilla, and
Quesadilla.
yeah, exactly.
Sorry, that's yeah.
No, of like somebody who is uneducated or doesn't know Mexican
Isn't in the know.
cuisine, isn't in the know. Yeah. And you know, you'll see it a lot, jalapenos.
Now this is the inside joke of my family is that we say like, oh, you want jalapenos in your quesadilla? And we know how to pronounce it.
Yes.
It's now just the inside joke in my family that we say jalapenos
Mm-hmm.
because we're just we're just weirdos. So there, I guess maybe that is funny. I don't
No,
know.
but that's okay. So that's inside joke. And yeah, it's making fun.
I think one of us started it to annoy another person in the family.
Right.
Like they would just
Because
sit there and twitch and be like, it's jalapeno. And we'd be like, yeah, those jalapenos.
inside joke.
Yeah.
Which again, that works, but it's when, there's a movie, and I cannot think of what movie it is. Probably our listeners are probably like, I know a movie that is, that was an ongoing joke where it was an uneducated family, and they would mispronounce words all the time. Maybe cute kind of the first time it happens, but for me, again, not my kind of humor.
Yeah, that gets
I think that's kind of punching down again.
a little bit sometimes. Yeah, so those ones were hard for me because it's like, you know, when there's a purpose behind like, okay, it's funny because they're saying jalapeno because they know it's jalapeno, but it's bothering another character and they're doing it to antagonize somebody else. And
Mm-hmm.
then you watch as everyone in the room starts doing it because everyone wants to antagonize this uptight person. Okay, that's funny. But like just putting the word jalapeno or putting the word guacamole in your text just like that
And
with
expecting there to be a big laugh.
it just doesn't work. That's just not
No.
what that does. Um what was do you remember off the top of your head what was other maybe less great advice that we saw?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I actually ended up moving to like good articles.
I remember one. I
Mhm.
remember one. I read one that suggested that the reader always had to be in on the joke because if they aren't, then maybe like the narrator is unreliable and an unreliable narrator should be avoided at any cost.
So all first person is always an unreliable narrator. And even a tight third is an
Can be
unreliable
unreliable
narrator, because none of us, as we are telling our stories, none of us are in reality. We're all in our perceived reality.
Yeah.
So unreliable narrators actually, I think, can be freaking hilarious.
They can
Both,
be.
yeah, both in being self-deprecating and then also in sometimes not knowing that something was funny.
Or like, I'm sorry, have you ever read like one of the funniest books, most famous comedy books in the world, which is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Right?
And the narrator is like extremely sometimes uh unreliable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hilarious and it works really well.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, we saw advice that says don't use sarcasm. And I'm like,
Yep.
um, there's a lot of really funny books that are really good that use sarcasm.
Yeah,
A lot.
that's a hard one. Like, yeah, if I think for me, some of the best advice is that humor is very subjective, as we've mentioned.
Mhm.
Everyone has their own sense of what is funny and what is not. And if you go about this attempting to write something that you're like, all right, I'm going to make something that's funny for other people, and other people think that the word kooky guacamole is funny, so I'm going to include that in my book, you're maybe not going to succeed. And instead, just focus on writing things that you think are funny,
Mhm.
like from your vantage point, you think are kooky. I'm gonna use that word. And that you think are witty or clever or physical humor or whatever it is that is your style. And if your style fits with using sarcasm, then you should use it. And if
Mhm.
your style fits with using self-deprecating humor, then use it. Or if it fits with using the word hullabaloo, great. But
Go for it.
if it doesn't, if your style doesn't fit with that, don't try to just, just shove it in there and think it'll be hilarious.
Right. I think humor is actually one of the hardest things to write. And have consistently people find it funny. And this is where your beta readers can really come in and really help you. If you've written a scene and you're like, I really wanted this to be a funny scene or a funny moment in there, and nobody comments on it, that's a good place to circle back and be like, hey, that one scene, what'd you think? Can I get some feedback on that? Was that laugh out loud funny for you? Or did you even notice it? And hopefully if you've chosen good beta readers, they're going to give you really good feedback on that. Because if they're like, oh, I didn't realize that was a joke. And you're like, oh, that was my best joke ever. Well, okay, now you know. It didn't quite work.
Well, and sometimes I've had to learn that sometimes like a joke that I think is hilarious, not everyone is going to think is hilarious, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to remove the joke.
No, not at all.
As long as it doesn't like distract from the story.
Mm-hmm.
If 40% of the people don't get the joke, but it didn't distract them, they weren't taken out, they just thought it was a part of the passage, right? And 40% of the people got the joke and they were like, oh, haha, that's funny. And 20% of the people started like snorting and crying. You succeeded. It's great.
Right, exactly.
Right?
I mean, I always think, I mean, you guys know I've mentioned Jodi Taylor before. I love her Chronicles of St. Mary series because they have so many weird side characters. I mean, Bashford with a chicken. The man carries around a chicken. You have to read the series if you haven't read it. It's hilarious. The way that R&D literally always blows up is hilarious. The time that they accidentally created a gelatinous mass that just kept expanding and expanding, and then Bashford had to throw his chicken up over it and try to get it up over the balcony was freaking hilarious. Does not advance the plot whatsoever. Let me tell you. So, sometimes you're like, there's literally no point to this other than it's funny, but you still enjoy it anyways.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm someone that when I write personally, like my style is I tend to have a lot of like not quite snide. I wouldn't say snide, but there's some clever like references and clever jokes that are kind of like folded in where they're inline jokes and inline text, their commentary, they're sometimes self-deprecating. It's because you have the narrator is very close, whether it's first or third, and their thoughts are kind of omnipresent. And they're kind of written in a way where like you said, they don't advance the plot, but I try to put them in where they're so fast that if you miss it, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like you missed it. It's all right. It's not going to hurt you. But if you did get it, one of my favorite jokes that I wrote in my last book, I had like 50% of my beta readers didn't get it at all. And in fact, thought it was a spelling mistake. And they were there like correcting my spelling. And then I had like the other, the one I mean. And then the other 50% of my beta readers thought it was like the most hilarious thing in the world. And I might just live with that. I might just say that there are people who it'll just go through, and and it doesn't advance the plot or do anything. Sometimes it's just fun. It's just fun.
It is just fun. I know. I agree. All right. Final thoughts on any of this? Or I think we kind of final thoughted it. Just have fun. I think that's my final thought on all of this before we go to what's on your page and our Discord and our race for the rejection. Have fun. It's
fun.
humor. It's
Follow
supposed to
your
be.
heart. If you find it funny, probably someone else will find it funny too.
Probably. All right. Ready to turn the final page?
Do it. Take us home.
All right. We're moving over to what's going on your page. And that's where we go to our Discord server, where you can go and hang out with us anytime you'd like.
All right.
And go for it.
I've pulled up the race to rejection, unless you have it.
All right. Nope, I do not.
I have our race to rejection up. I would like to say I was doing so well for so long on the race to rejection. And then I've gotten blown out of the water.
There are people really racing on this one.
There are people really racing. So it is, as we're recording, November 28th. We have until the end of December here to try to get in those final rejections of the year. Right now, it is almost a dead. Nope. KJ Shepherd is pulling ahead here. So on the year, he has had 93 rejections.
Holy cow. So he will definitely clear 100.
One would think he will clear 100. The next closest is Richard with 77.
That's impressive.
Yeah. I am very impressed. Very impressed. And so they've got another month. We'll see what happens if KJ Shepherd is our rejection royalty again, or if we will have new royalty to welcome to the party.
I like it. I like it.
I was so proud of myself. I'm at like 41.
That's really impressive.
Yeah, I'm a loser. It's great. And that, my friends, is self-deprecating humor.
That is self-deprecating humor. It is.
But if you think it's too late to join our race to rejection, but you're feeling inspired, you want to be inspired to celebrate being a writer is difficult because oftentimes you have to put yourself out there. You have to put your stories out there, either if you're querying or submitting short stories. Because the great thing about being a writer is it's fun. But if you never send your stories off, they won't ever get published and no one else will read them. Unless you're self-publishing or something like that. So if you have problems doing that, like me, and you want a safe place where you can, celebrate those rejections, celebrate moving on, trying again, and not let it discourage you, then everyone is welcome to join our race to rejection. We'll probably start a new one in January. If that's when you want to start with a clean slate and go for it from then.
Yeah. Good. The other thing we want to tell you guys about is our first page critiques. Every other Wednesday is our live show. And on that live show, we talk about something pop culture-y. We just did What We Do in Shadows. We did House of the Dragon. We did The Maid. And then we tie that in to a first page. We tie the genre in with the first page. This is a very, very positive critique. We use the method of, help me, Molly.
Even better if.
Thank you. Even better if, where we comment on what we really liked about it. And then we say, this is really good. It would be even better if ... So if you are interested in submitting your first page, you go to our website, www.semisagesofthepages.com. Go ahead and fill out that form. Please do not send us an email because we really need to track it properly.
You can send us emails.
Please do. Yes.
But not your first page submissions emails, please. We won't put it in the tracker. If you send us it via email, it won't get put as a possibility for a podcast.
Yeah. If you are not sure about it, and you want to chat with us beforehand, please come on to our Discord, just message us. We want to make this a safe place for our people that submit their first pages. But
And
it's really
it's all
fun.
anonymous.
It is
It's
all
all
anonymous.
anonymous. It's a positive environment. And you can always check out one of our previous culture clubs on YouTube. We have the audio on however you listen to your audio stuff, you can find it there. Or like I said, you can watch our faces on the YouTube with Culture Club, and you can see for yourself whether it's a environment you want to participate in. Hopefully it is.
Absolutely. We have gotten really good feedback from some of the people who submitted about how helpful it was. So that made us feel really good too. It told us that we're on the right track.
Yeah. And once again, if you want to do that, all the information is on our website, www.semisagesofthepages.com. Pretty easy to remember. And if you want to connect with us, you can connect with us via social media, our email, which is semisages@gmail.com. Or Theresa, where is the best place for people to hang out with us?
It's our Discord. I can't believe we haven't said anything beforehand. That would be sarcasm humor.
That is a callback to previous.
So it really is the best place. We hang out on there a fair amount, and it's a really nice group of people on there too. Very, very supportive, very, very helpful. So come on, hang out with us there. Hang out with our other listeners.
All right. On that note, everyone, have a lovely rest of your day.
And don't forget to give us 5 stars.
Yeah.
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 All right. Take care, everyone.